Good evening. You're watching Awani Tonight with me, Soraya Mia. Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim and the presidents of political parties in the unity government have been invited to attend the UMNO General Assembly from June 7 to 10. UMNO Secretary General Dr. Ashraf Wajdi Dusuki, in describing this as a historic moment for the party, said Anwar has confirmed his attendance but will not give a speech. Apart from the party president, all party wing leaders who support the government have also been invited. Commenting on the agenda to be discussed by the delegates, Ashraf Wajdi said it would include the people's economic issues on Islam and Malays and Bumiputras. There will also be discussions on political and government stability and the upcoming 6 state elections. As the impending elections in 6 states draw near, election watchdog group Bersih warned that voter turnout is expected to be around 60%, significantly lower than figures seen in recent federal elections. We spoke to Chairperson Thomas Fan, who sheds light on the situation and discusses necessary measures to encourage a higher voter turnout.
I think there's a few factors that influence voter turnout. Of course, the political situation of the day, the issues that are before the voters. I think these are where political party can play a part to encourage voter turnout. But really, I think the Election Commission has a major role in that. If it is difficult for people to, or inconvenient for people to come out and vote, then it will suppress voter turnout. So the EC can do things that make it easier for people to turn out. For example, one thing is if in this particular 6 state elections where the dissolvement of the state assembly is almost like a given, it will have to be at the end of June, which means that if the state government, first of all, can agree on a common date to dissolve, it means that EC can choose a date within 60 days of that. By letting people know in advance the date of the election, I think it will help people to get ready for it. I think the second thing that EC can do is actually to make it easier for people to vote in this state election by allowing out-of-state voters, those who are living away from their state due to work or education, to apply to become postal voter. That would also encourage a higher participation rate.
The Election Commission, he said, should open up voter registration sooner to accommodate overseas voters.
Now we know that overseas voter can apply to become postal voter. Now, up to now, the EC has not opened up registration for this coming 6 state election. There is no reason why they could not open up registration earlier so that more of those from overseas can apply to be voters rather than giving a very narrow or small window for them to apply.
The Health Ministry has invited private general practitioners in 10 selected districts to join the Madani Medical Scheme pilot program. The scheme is a free health service for recipients of the Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah cash aid. It will start on June 15th.
Health Minister Dr. Zaliha Mustafa said the 10 participating districts were Gombak, Hulu Langat, Klang and Petaling in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, Kinta in Perak, Timor Laut in Penang, Johor Bahru, Kota Kinabalu and Kuching. She said GPs in these locations could register as Madani Medical Scheme panel clinics starting today. She added that Protect Health would organize online briefings and training sessions for registered GPs. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim first announced the scheme when tabling the Budget 2023 in February. It is part of the government's initiatives to reduce congestion and patient waiting time at its health facilities.
Malaysia will remain a free market for telecommunication companies in the rollout of its second 5G network. This would mean that Malaysia's telcos are free to decide whether to work with Chinese equipment makers, including Huawei Technologies, despite security risk warnings from the West. According to Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fadzil, the government is not entering into any contractual obligations with any of the network equipment providers. He said the decision is a commercial one, adding that it is up to the network equipment providers to convince the telecommunication companies to be a part of the 5G rollout. It was previously reported that the US and European Union had warned Malaysia about risks to national security and foreign investment should Huawei win its bid for the country's 5G contract. Malaysia plans to deploy a second 5G network from as early as January next year, with the contracts to build the second network awarded through an open tender process. Although Malaysia has made progress in preschool education in the past decade, the momentum was halted due to the pandemic. It is evident from the enrollment rate, which declined to 82% since the pandemic. World Bank's Liu Swet Lee says this translates to almost 165,000 children in the country not enrolled.
And I think the most pressing issue is when the pandemic hit, it pushed the country back even more. So now there's a drop in enrollment to now only 82%. And we see actually half the preschool enrollment in the country is actually in private preschools. So affordability of preschool is probably the biggest concern and the reason for the drop as well. And when we talk about striving for universal access to preschool, it's not just about universal access to any preschool, but quality preschools. We looked at 82% who are enrolled. This means that 18% are left out. And that's close to 165,000 children in Malaysia who are not enrolled in preschool. And this will put them at a disadvantage when they enter primary one. And even though it's just 1 year of preschool, missing out on this 1 year will result in these children lagging behind their peers, especially if there are no interventions later on as well. And, because there's compounding effects of these benefits, there'll be long-term repercussions to not just the children, but also the society and economy as well.
Therefore, it is crucial for the government to invest more into high-quality early education.
OECD suggested that we spend at least 1% of GDP on pre-primary education, and Malaysia is only at 0.15%. We also recommend that the government, both MOE and Kemas schools, expand the number of seats available so that there are more free public schools. And we also recommend that, the government increase its support to teachers so that they can meet the minimum qualifications, as well as increase the support for more professional development in schools.
In order to improve quality of preschools in the country, it's important to ensure teachers have the right qualifications. Swet Lee urges the government to make early childhood education diploma more accessible to preschool teachers.
And in the report, we highlighted that about 50% of teachers, especially those in private preschools, have not met the minimum qualification of having an early childhood diploma. So one of the things that we really hope the government can do is to increase awareness of the importance of this diploma and to ensure that private operators actually abide by the requirement, and also to reduce the cost for this diploma as well, because it can be very expensive for teachers, especially those, they don't earn that much as well in terms of salary, for them to take on the diploma. That is also a barrier as well. So the government can do more in subsidizing this diploma and ensuring that it's affordable for teachers.
We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back.
Petronas is pleased to partner with CERAWeek by S&P Global to co-create Energy Asia 2023 as a flagship strategic platform to advance solutions and develop clear targets and policies.
Roadmaps will be explored, debated and defined.
It's a question of technology, it's a question of finance, and it's a question of innovation.
See you at Energy Asia 2023 in Kuala Lumpur.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Welcome back. Japan's birth rate fell for the 7th consecutive year to a record low in 2022, according to the country's health ministry. This adds to growing concerns as Japan's population continues to shrink and age rapidly.
The fertility rate, which measures the average number of children born to a woman in her lifetime, was 1.256. This is lower than the previous low of 1.26 recorded in 2006 and falls well below the rate of 2.07 that is considered essential for maintaining a stable population. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said the youth population was projected to decline significantly from the 2030s and has vowed to reverse the declining birth rate. Despite the country's high levels of debt, the government plans to allocate $25 billion annually for childcare and other initiatives supporting parents. The number of newborn babies in Japan fell by 5% last year to around 770,000, while the number of deaths rose by 9% to a record 1.57 million.
The U.S. Congress has approved a deal to lift the country's borrowing limit just days before it was due to default on its debt. The bipartisan measure was approved in a Senate by a vote of 63 to 36 after it cleared the U.S. House of Representatives.
The world's biggest economy was projected to hit its borrowing limit on June 5th. The bill was passed with support from 44 Democrats and 17 Republicans, along with 2 independents. President Joe Biden has said he will sign the measure into law as soon as possible. For weeks, reaching an agreement proved challenging due to the Republicans' control of the lower chamber of Congress and Democrats holding the Senate and White House. However, a compromise was reached last weekend between Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The legislation will suspend the statutory limit on federal borrowing until January 1, 2025. Unlike most other developed countries, the U.S. limits the amount of debt the government can borrow, regardless of any spending allocated by the legislature.
At least 45 bags with human remains were found in the western Mexican state of Jalisco as authorities hunt for 7 young people who went missing last week. The gruesome discovery was made on Tuesday at the bottom of the 40-meter ravine in the city of Zapopan, a large industrial hub. However, officials are still unsure whether any of the remains belong to the 7 people missing.
Police had been searching for 2 women and 5 men, all aged around 30, who had been reported missing since May 20th. Investigators found that they all worked at the same call center near where the human remains were discovered. Local media reported that the call center may have been a front for an organized crime network running telephone fraud, but families of the missing accused the authorities of trying to criminalize the victims. Forensic experts are still trying to determine the number of victims and their identities. In recent years, human remains have been found in bags or unmarked makeshift graves in various areas of Jalisco. In 2021, around 70 bags containing the human remains of 11 people were found. And in 2019, the remains of 29 people were found in 119 bags in an uninhabited area of Zapopan.
Southern and eastern China are expected to face a prolonged heat wave this month. National forecasters predict temperatures in southern China to hit more than 35 degrees Celsius the next 3 days, with some areas exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. On Monday, Shanghai endured its hottest day in May in more than a century, with temperatures hitting 36.7 degrees. Demand for electricity also surged in recent days as people and businesses turn on air conditioning. Parts of southeastern Shenzhen suffered intermittent power outages at the start of this week, with some 2,000 households affected. One of the country's 2 grid operators saw its peak power load exceeding 200 million kilowatts, close to historical highs. That's all we have for you on Awani Tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Soraya Mia, and we'll see you again